He tore my dead daughter's teddy bear in half, spit on it, and said, "Your little girl's better off dead than having a criminal for a daddy." When I begged him to stop grinding her sunflowers into the pavement, he twisted my shoulder until it popped and said, "You people only understand pain." I didn't say a word. That was 3 months ago. This morning, he was dragged out of his squad car, crying, with a camera crew watching. A police officer approached me with his hand on his hip because I was walking with a dangerous and sharp object, which was actually just my daughter's old teddy bear with its spring sticking out. When I gave it to him so he could examine it, he spit on it and threw it to the ground, then dislocated my shoulder while cuffing me, claiming my daughter was better off without a father of my kind. I lost my daughter 2 years ago. I started working at a children's hospital just to help kids end up not like her. I was walking to her grave after my shift on her 2-year anniversary carrying Mr. Hoppy, her favorite teddy bear, when this patrol car screeched to a halt right beside me. This officer, who I'd seen once before and heard only bad things about, jumped out. He locked eyes with me and immediately put his hand on his weapon. "Get on the pavement now! You're under arrest!" he screamed at me. I slowly raised my hands, still holding the sunflowers and the bunny I was carrying. I identified myself, told him where I lived, told him where I was heading, and asked what I was being arrested for. But before I was even done talking, he yelled over, "Stop resisting!" I hadn't even moved a muscle. "You fit the description of an armed robbery suspect. Why are you in this neighborhood?" He completely ignored that I had just told him I lived there. "That bunny could be concealing a weapon," he said, and started aggressively patting me down. "You people always have excuses." That's when everything went to hell. He slammed me face first onto the cement wall beside us, and my lips split open on impact. He ripped Mr. Hoppy from my hands and started aggressively manhandling it. "Aha! I see it!" he yelled, referring to the spring coming out its behind. "Knowing you people, there's a weapon in here." He proceeded to grab the bunny with both hands and tore it clean in half. I remember my heart literally breaking watching the stuffing spill out onto the pavement. He started examining the ground looking for a weapon, which he of course didn't find. However, this seemed to only infuriate me more. He started looking me up and down, muttering something about con artists, and that's when he noticed the memorial tattoo on my forearm. It had my daughter's full name, her birth and death date, as well as little angels and hearts around it. "Pfft," he scoffed. "Your little one's really dead. I took you for the lying type." I stayed silent. Little girl's better off dead than having a criminal for a daddy anyway. I remember doing everything I could to hold myself back from just swinging wildly. But then, he took my wallet out. I saw him pocket $150 cash, and when he saw a picture of my wife, he actually smirked. "Huh, your daughter was a mutt. Unbelievable. You know, maybe I'll even stop by and console your wife while you're locked up. Make her white A's realize she should have married within her race." He ground the sunflower petals under his boot while twisting my arms behind my back. I felt my shoulder pop out of its socket, and the pain shot through my entire body. "Please, that's all I have left of her." I almost started tearing up watching him step on the remains of Mr. Hoppy. But this officer wasn't even done. He got on his radio. "Unit 17 requesting immediate backup. One black male suspect extremely combative. Attempted assault on an officer." But that's when something happened. The passenger door of the same patrol car this officer was in flew open, and another officer stepped out. He looked a little older than the officer arresting me, but he massive. Maybe 6'5" and like 250 pounds of straight muscle. Scars on his face that made him look like he had seen some serious combat. I genuinely thought this was it for me, until I heard him yelling, "Officer Droolsworth, stand down immediately!" His voice boomed so loud that dogs started barking 3 houses down. "Release this man right now. That's a direct order." He grabbed the officer's hand and yanked it back, forcing him to let go of me. I remember grabbing my shoulder in pain, in disbelief that this cop was actually helping me. Droolsworth's face went from cocky to confused. "You don't understand, Sarge, this guy was— You just assaulted a grieving father on his daughter's death anniversary." The officer cut him off. "I heard you threaten his wife. I saw you destroy his daughter's memorial." Droolsworth made the mistake of trying to shove past his superior to get to me. "You're taking his side? What about the blue wall?" Williams grabbed Droolsworth's wrist mid-shove. "You just assaulted a superior officer. Hands behind your back." At first, Droolsworth tried resisting. "My dad owns our department. He'll get you for this." But the senior office didn't even budge. He brought him back to their vehicle by force, even socking him twice seemingly out of just pure rage. He then slammed the door on him and came back to me. He got down on the ground and carefully collected every single piece of the stuffed bunny. "Sir, I am deeply sorry. This is inexcusable. You will be compensated and Droolsworth will pay for this." His voice cracked a little when he said, "I lost my daughter too. What this slimy bastard did makes me ashamed to be a cop myself." He then looked me dead in the eye. He wasn't lying though. His dad owns our department. My A's is gonna be in the crock pot now. "If you have to, will you help me?" I said yes, without hesitation. But unfortunately, I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. The next morning, I woke up with my shoulder throbbing and my mind racing. Williams had given me his personal number before driving me home, and I found myself staring at it on the crumpled piece of paper. My wife had already left for her shift at the hospital, leaving a note reminding me to ice my shoulder. I couldn't stop thinking about what Williams meant by needing my help. I decided to call him. He picked up on the second ring and asked me to meet him at a diner on the edge of town, away from the precinct. When I arrived, he was already there, hunched over a cup of coffee in the corner booth. His massive frame barely fit in the seat, and those combat scars looked even more pronounced in the harsh fluorescent lighting. He slid a folder across the table to me. Inside were photos and incident reports, all with one name recurring: Officer Droolsworth. My stomach turned as I flipped through page after page. There were at least 7 other incidents over the past 3 years. Black men, Latino men, even a few white men who didn't look right to him. All stopped for bogus reasons. All roughed up. All had complaints mysteriously disappear. Williams explained that Droolsworth's father wasn't just high up in the department, he practically ran it. Any officer who spoke up found themselves on the worst shifts, passed over for promotions, or suddenly under investigation for minor infractions. Williams himself had already received 3 calls that morning morning warning him to drop this. I asked what he needed from me. He leaned forward and explained that with my testimony and medical documentation of my injuries, combined with his witness account, they might finally have enough to go to internal affairs. But it would mean going up against the entire Droolsworth machine. He warned me they would dig into my life, try to discredit me, maybe even threaten my job at the hospital. I thought about my daughter's destroyed teddy bear, now in pieces in a plastic bag on my kitchen counter. I thought about her grave, which I never got to visit yesterday. I thought about every other father who might walk that same street and meet Officer Droolsworth. I told Williams I was in. We spent the next hour going over everything. Williams had been secretly documenting Droolsworth's behavior for months, keeping copies of reports at his home because he knew the originals would disappear from the station. He showed me body cam footage from other incidents that had somehow been corrupted in the official files, but which he had saved. As we were leaving, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number with a photo of my wife walking into the hospital where she worked. The message read, "Beautiful woman. Would be a shame if something happened on her walk to the car tonight." My blood ran cold. Williams saw my face change and grabbed the phone. His jaw clenched as he read it. He immediately called my wife and told her to stay inside the hospital, that he would personally escort her to her car. Then he turned to me with a look I'll never forget. Part rage, part determination. He drove me to the hospital to pick up my wife. On the way, he told me about his own daughter. She had been culled by a hammered driver 5 years ago. The driver was the son of a wealthy businessman who got him the best lawyers. He walked away with community service. Williams said that's when he realized the system was broken, but he stayed a cop because he thought he could still make a difference from the inside. At the hospital, my wife was waiting in the lobby, confused and scared. I showed her the text and watched her face go pale. Williams assured her he would have a patrol car drive by our house every hour, officers he trusted, but we all knew that might not be enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every car that passed, every dog that barked, had me jumping to the window. My wife held my good arm, trying to stay calm for both of us. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps on our porch. I grabbed the baseball bat we kept by the bed and crept to the front door. Through the peephole, I saw Officer Droolsworth, out of uniform, spray painting something on our door. I yanked it open and confronted him. He smiled that same sick smile from yesterday and said I should have kept my mouth shut, that his daddy owned this town and I was nothing, that Williams was already being transferred to the worst precinct in the state, that my wife's safety depended on me forgetting everything that happened. I wanted to swing that bat so badly my hands shook. Why does Droolsworth's father have this much control over an entire police department? This officer acts like he's untouchable, destroying memorial items and pocketing cash right in front of another cop. Williams collecting secret evidence for months makes me wonder how deep this really goes, but I knew that's what he wanted. Instead, I took out my phone and started recording. He tried to grab it, but I stepped back. He threatened me again, more explicitly this time, saying accidents happen all the time, especially to people who don't know their place. My neighbor's porch light came on, and Droolsworth quickly walked back to his car, but not before I got everything on video, including his license plate and the racial slur he'd painted on my door. I immediately sent the video to Williams and made several backup copies. The next day, Williams came by with 2 other officers he trusted. They took photos of the graffiti and took my statement. Williams looked exhausted, and I could tell the pressure was already getting to him. He mentioned that 3 officers who had promised to back him up had suddenly changed their minds after late-night visits from Droolsworth Sr. We decided to file the internal affairs complaint that afternoon. Williams had gathered 12 other victims willing to testify, though most were terrified. As we walked into the IA office, I noticed Droolsworth Sr. in the parking lot, watching us with cold eyes. He didn't say anything, just stood there like a vulture. The internal affairs interview was grueling. They questioned every detail, trying to poke holes in our story. They asked why I was walking alone at night, why I had that teddy bear, whether I had been drinking. They implied that maybe I had provoked Officer Droolsworth. Williams had warned me this would happen, but it still felt like being victimized all over again. After 3 hours, we finally finished. The IA detective, a stern woman named Detective Chen, said she would review everything and be in touch. Williams walked me out, and we both knew this was just the beginning. In the parking lot, Droolsworth Sr. was still there, now talking on his phone while staring directly at us. That evening, Williams called with bad news. He had been suspended pending an investigation into conduct unbecoming an officer. The charge was that he had assaulted Officer Droolsworth during the arrest. I couldn't believe it. Williams said he expected this, that it was their first move to discredit him. He told me to be careful, that things would probably get worse before they got better. He was right. The next day at work, my supervisor called me in. Someone had made an anonymous complaint that I had been stealing medications from the children's ward. It was completely fabricated, but I had to submit to a full investigation. My locker was searched, my car was searched, and I was put on administrative leave while they investigated. My wife started getting hang-up calls at work. Our car tires were slashed while parked at the grocery store. Dead flowers appeared on our doorstep with notes saying, "For your daughter." Each incident was just vague enough that we couldn't prove it was connected to Droolsworth, but we knew. Williams kept fighting despite his suspension. He reached out to a civil rights attorney who agreed to take our case pro bono. She said we had strong evidence, but warned us that the Droolsworths had deep pockets and deeper connections. She had seen cases like this before, where the entire system closed ranks to protect one of their own. A week into our complaint, I got a call from one of the other victims who was supposed to testify. He was backing out. He said his boss had suddenly started finding problems with his work, and he couldn't risk losing his job. 2 more victims called with similar stories over the next few days. The Droolsworths were systematically destroying our case, but we also started getting unexpected support. A young officer named Martinez reached out to Williams, saying he had witnessed Droolsworth plant evidence during a traffic stop, but had been too scared to report it. A dispatcher named Janet said she had recordings of Droolsworth using racial slurs over the radio that had been ordered destroyed. Slowly, cracks were appearing in the blue wall. The turning point came when Williams discovered something in the old files. 3 years ago, Officer Droolsworth had been involved in an incident where a young black man had died in custody. The official report said it was a substance OD, but Williams found the original medical examiner's report that suggested otherwise. It had been buried, replaced with a revised version that supported the official story. We knew this was big, but we also knew it put us in even more danger. Williams arranged for my wife and me to stay with his sister outside the city for a few days, while he worked with the attorney to bring this to the right people. As we packed, I held the plastic bag with Mr. Hoppy's remains. I promised my daughter I would see this through. The night before we were supposed to leave, I made one last visit to my daughter's grave. I needed to tell her what was happening, why I hadn't been to see her. As I knelt by her headstone, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Officer Droolsworth, this time in full uniform, hand on his weapon. My heart hammered as Droolsworth approached slowly, savoring the moment. He circled around me like a predator, his boots crunching on the cemetery gravel. I stayed kneeling by my daughter's headstone, calculating my options. The cemetery was deserted at this hour. No witnesses, no help coming. He stopped directly behind me, and I heard the unmistakable sound of his baton sliding from his belt. My shoulder still throbbed from our last encounter, making any sudden movement risky. I placed my hand on my daughter's headstone, drawing strength from her memory. The baton whistled through the air. I rolled sideways just as it cracked against the headstone where my head had been. The impact left a chip in the granite, desecrating her memorial. Rage flooded through me as I scrambled to my feet, but Droolsworth was already swinging again. I ducked under the swing and backed away, keeping the headstones between us. He pursued relentlessly, knocking over flower vases and memorial decorations in his path. Each destroyed memorial felt like another violation, another family's grief disrespected. My phone was recording in my pocket, capturing everything. Droolsworth didn't seem to care. He wanted to hurt me, consequences be damned. His face was twisted with the same sick pleasure I'd seen before. He feinted left, then charged right, catching me off guard. His shoulder slammed into my injured one, sending lightning bolts of pain through my body. I stumbled backward, tripping over a low headstone and landing hard on my back. Droolsworth stood over me, raising the baton high. I grabbed a handful of gravel and threw it in his face, buying myself seconds to roll away. His wild swing missed, the baton embedding itself in the soft earth. As he yanked it free, I managed to get to my feet and started moving toward the cemetery entrance. But Droolsworth was faster, cutting off my escape route. We circled each other between the graves, both breathing hard. He made another charge. This time I was ready, sidestepping and using his momentum against him. He crashed into a large memorial statue, grunting in pain, but he recovered quickly, more enraged than before. The chase continued through the cemetery rows. I knocked over a trash can in his path, spilling old flowers and memorial items. He kicked through them, relentless in his pursuit. My injured shoulder screamed with every movement, slowing me down. Finally, I reached the cemetery gate, but Droolsworth had anticipated this, his patrol car blocking the exit. I was trapped. He advanced slowly now, confident in his victory. That's when headlights flooded the cemetery entrance. Williams's truck roared up, screeching to a halt inches from Droolsworth's patrol car. Williams jumped out, his own phone already recording. Droolsworth's confidence evaporated. He quickly holstered his baton, trying to act casual, but we all knew what had almost happened. Williams positioned himself between us, his massive frame a welcome shield. The three of us stood there in tense silence. Finally, Droolsworth backed toward his patrol car, pointing at both of us with barely contained fury. He peeled out, tires squealing, leaving us in the sudden quiet of the cemetery. Williams helped me back to my daughter's grave to collect my things. The chip in her headstone from his baton made my chest tight with fresh grief. We documented the damage, adding it to our growing file of evidence. Back at Williams' truck, he explained he'd been monitoring Droolsworth's patrol car on an unofficial channel. When he saw him heading toward the cemetery, he knew I was in danger. His suspension meant he wasn't supposed to interfere, but he came anyway. We drove to Williams' sister's house where my wife was already waiting. The small ranch house sat on the outskirts of town, far from the Droolsworth's usual territory. Williams' sister Catherine was a nurse, tough and no nonsense like her brother. She took one look at my shoulder and insisted on examining it. While she worked on my shoulder, Williams spread out all our evidence on the kitchen table. The photos, videos, witness statements, and now the cemetery footage. It painted a clear picture of escalating harassment and abuse of power. My wife held my hand as Catherine manipulated my shoulder back into better alignment. The pain was excruciating, but necessary. She fashioned a proper sling and gave me instructions for care. Throughout it all, I could see the worry in my wife's eyes. Williams's phone rang. It was Martinez, the young officer who'd offered to help. His voice was shaky as Williams put him on speaker. Martinez had just been written up for multiple violations he hadn't committed. His sergeant made it clear the write-ups would disappear if he forgot about Droolsworth. After the call, we sat in heavy silence. The Droolsworths were systematically eliminating our support. Williams slammed his fist on the table, scattering some papers. Martinez getting those fake write-ups that magically disappear if he plays nice? That's corruption with a gift receipt attached. Keep your receipt for easy returns on your morals. His frustration was palpable, but he quickly gathered himself. We spent the night planning our next moves. The civil rights attorney had suggested we needed more concrete evidence of the cover-up itself, not just Droolsworth's individual actions. Williams had an idea about accessing old department records, but it would be risky. The next morning, I woke to find Williams already gone. Catherine said he'd left before dawn to meet with someone. My wife was in the kitchen, dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. The stress was taking its toll on both of us. Around noon, Williams returned with Janet, the dispatcher who'd mentioned having recordings. She was nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. She'd brought a flash drive containing audio files spanning 2 years. We listened to recording after recording of Droolsworth's radio communications, racial slurs, threats against suspects, jokes about planting evidence. In one recording, we could hear Droolsworth Sr. in the background, laughing at his son's comments. Janet explained she'd been secretly recording after witnessing Droolsworth's behavior firsthand. She'd tried reporting it through proper channels once, but her supervisor had threatened her job, so she kept recording, waiting for the right moment. That moment seemed to be now. Janet agreed to testify if we could protect her job. Williams promised to do everything in his power, though we all knew his influence was limited while suspended. As Janet left, a news van pulled up outside. Someone had leaked our location. Williams quickly ushered us inside while Catherine dealt with the reporters. We couldn't afford media attention yet, not when the Droolsworths still controlled the narrative. Through the window, I watched Catherine firmly but politely refuse to comment. The reporters eventually left, but we knew they'd be back. The Droolsworths were trying to paint us as anti-police activists, outcasts, troublemakers seeking attention. That afternoon, Detective Chen from Internal Affairs called Williams. She wanted to meet, but not at the station. She suggested a park on the other side of town. Williams was suspicious, but agreed. My wife and I waited anxiously while Williams went to the meeting. Catherine tried to distract us with small talk, but our minds were elsewhere. Every car that passed made us tense. Williams returned 2 hours later with mixed news. Chen believed our case had merit, but she was facing pressure from above to close the investigation. She'd given Williams a warning that Drulesworth Sr. was planning something big to discredit us permanently. We needed to act fast. Williams suggested we compile everything into a comprehensive package for Chen, something so damning it couldn't be ignored. We spent the rest of the day organizing evidence, creating timelines, and preparing statements. As night fell, my phone rang. It was my supervisor from the hospital. The investigation into the medication theft allegations had expanded. They were now looking into my entire employment history, interviewing colleagues, reviewing every patient interaction. The implications were clear. Even if I was cleared, the damage to my reputation would be severe. The Drulesworths were trying to destroy my credibility before I could testify. My wife squeezed my hand as I hung up, both of us understanding what this meant for our future. Williams made more calls, reaching out to officers who might still help. Most didn't answer. Those who did spoke in hushed tones, fearful of being overheard. The blue wall was strong, but cracks were showing. One officer, Jonathan, agreed to meet Williams secretly. He had information about the altered medical examiner's report from 3 years ago. He'd been a rookie then, ordered to destroy the original. He'd kept a copy instead, hiding it all these years. The meeting was set for the following morning at an abandoned warehouse. It felt like something out of a movie, but Jonathan was too paranoid to meet anywhere public. Williams would go alone while we waited safely at Catherine's house. That night, none of us slept well. I kept checking on my wife, watching her fitful sleep. The plastic bag with Mr. Hoppy's remains sat on the nightstand, a constant reminder of why we were fighting. Morning came too quickly. Williams left for his meeting with Jonathan while we tried to maintain normal routines. Catherine went to her hospital shift, leaving us alone in the house. The quiet was oppressive. An hour passed, then 2. Williams should have been back. My wife paced the living room while I tried calling his phone. No answer. Fear crept in as we considered the possibilities. Finally, Williams's truck pulled up, but something was wrong. He moved stiffly, holding his ribs. Inside, he collapsed on the couch, breathing shallow. Jonathan had been a setup. 3 officers had been waiting, all loyal to Drulesworth Sr. They'd worked Williams over professionally, careful not to leave visible marks. The message was clear. Drop the case or worse would follow. They'd taken his phone, his copies of evidence, everything he'd brought to the meeting. My wife grabbed ice while I helped Williams to a more comfortable position. His face was tight with pain and anger, but even struck, he wasn't giving up. He'd hidden backup copies of everything at another location. As my wife tended to Williams, I felt the weight of what we were up against. The Drulesworths had the entire department in their pocket. Every move we made, they were 2 steps ahead. But looking at the bag with Mr. Hoppy, I knew we couldn't stop. Williams insisted on continuing despite his injuries. He made calls from Catherine's landline, reaching out to contacts outside the local department. If we couldn't get justice here, maybe we could find it elsewhere. One call proved promising. A state police detective Williams had worked with years ago was interested in our case. Police corruption fell under their jurisdiction, especially when local internal affairs was compromised, but they'd need solid evidence to intervene. We spent the afternoon preparing a new package of evidence. Williams moved slowly, wincing with each breath, but his determination never wavered. My wife helped organize documents while I uploaded digital copies to secure cloud storage. As evening approached, Catherine returned from her shift with troubling news. She'd overheard doctors discussing my case. The hospital administration was under pressure to terminate me immediately, not wait for the investigation's conclusion. The noose was tightening. My career, our financial stability, everything we'd built was crumbling. My wife tried to stay strong, but I could see the fear in her eyes. We were ordinary people caught in something bigger than ourselves. Williams made another call, this time to the civil rights attorney. She advised us to file a formal complaint with the state police immediately. Every day we waited gave the Drulesworths more time to destroy evidence and intimidate witnesses. But filing meant going fully public with our allegations. No more hiding at Catherine's house. No more operating in the shadows. We'd be painting targets on our backs, inviting retaliation we might not be able to handle. I looked at my wife, seeking her input. She took my hand and nodded. We'd come too far to back down now. Williams called his state police contact and arranged to file the complaint the next morning. That night, we tried to prepare for what was coming. Williams, despite his injuries, insisted on staying awake to keep watch. My wife and I lay in the guest bed, holding each other, wondering if we'd made the right choice. Around midnight, car engines roared outside. Multiple vehicles surrounded the house. Williams yelled for us to stay down as he peered through the curtains. It wasn't the police, it was civilians. Drulesworth Sr.'s unofficial muscle. They didn't try to enter, just sat in their cars with engines running. The message was clear. We were being watched, our every move monitored. Williams called 911, but the dispatcher said unless they actually did something, no units were available. We spent the rest of the night in tense vigilance. The cars finally left at dawn, but we knew they'd be back. Catherine returned from pulling a double shift to find us exhausted and on edge. Over breakfast, we finalized our plan. Williams and I would drive to the state police headquarters to file the complaint. My wife would stay with Catherine, safer here than coming with us. The separation was hard, but necessary. The 2-hour drive was tense. Williams constantly checked the mirrors, watching for tails. His ribs were still bothering him, but he refused to let me drive. He needed to feel in control of something. State police headquarters was an imposing building, all glass and steel. Inside, we were directed to a small conference room where Detective Nathan Catt waited. He was younger than I expected, but his eyes were sharp and attentive. For 3 hours, we laid out everything. The assault, the harassment, the cover-ups, the intimidation. Detective Catt took detailed notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. He was particularly interested in the altered medical examiner's report. When we finished, Detective Catt leaned back in his chair. He believed us, but warned the investigation would take time. The Drulesworths had been careful, their corruption hidden behind procedure and bureaucracy, but he promised to dig deep. We left feeling both relieved and anxious. The official wheels were turning, but we still had to survive until justice came. On the drive back, Williams received a text text from Catherine. My wife was safe, but worried. As we neared town, William's phone rang. It was Martinez, panic in his voice. He'd just been arrested on bogus charges. Substance possession, they claimed, after finding evidence in his locker. The same locker that had been searched days ago. Williams pulled over, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Martinez getting arrested right after speaking up makes me wonder who's watching every single move these people make. The timing feels too perfect. They knew exactly when to strike and what would hurt most. The Droolsworths were escalating, taking out anyone who'd shown us support. Martinez was just the first. We both knew more arrests would follow. We decided to stop at Williams' house to retrieve his hidden evidence copies before returning to Catherine's. The house looked undisturbed from the outside, but Williams approached cautiously. His police instincts were screaming danger. Inside, the house had been ransacked. Furniture overturned, drawers emptied, papers scattered everywhere. But Williams went straight to the kitchen, removing a false panel behind the refrigerator. The evidence copies were still there, untouched. As we prepared to leave, voices came from outside. Through the window, we saw Droolsworth Sr. with 2 other officers. They weren't in uniform, trying to look casual, but their intentions were clear as they approached the door. Williams and I slipped out the back as they entered the front. We could hear them inside, searching for us. We made it to the truck and drove away quickly, but not before Droolsworth Sr. spotted us through the window. The drive back to Catherine's was nerve-wracking. We took a circuitous route, doubling back several times. Williams' injuries were clearly bothering him more, his breathing labored, but he pushed through, focused on getting us to safety. When we finally arrived, my wife ran out to meet us. The relief on her face quickly turned to concern when she saw Williams' condition. Catherine immediately went into nurse mode, insisting on examining him properly. While Catherine tended to Williams, my wife filled me in. The intimidation had continued here too. Strange cars driving by slowly, phone calls with just breathing on the other end. She'd been strong, but I could see the toll it was taking. That evening, Detective Cat called with an update. He'd already uncovered irregularities in the department's records. Several complaints against Droolsworth had been deleted from the system, but digital forensics had recovered fragments. It was progress, but slow. We spent another sleepless night, taking turns keeping watch. The cars returned, parking just outside Catherine's property line. Legal harassment, nothing we could act on. The psychological warfare was exhausting. Morning brought unexpected news. Chen from Internal Affairs had been transferred suddenly, replaced by someone with ties to Droolsworth Sr. Our inside ally was gone, the local investigation effectively dead, but Williams had one more card to play. He'd been holding back a crucial piece of evidence, waiting for the right moment. Security footage from a private business near where the young man had died 3 years ago. Footage that contradicted the official police report. The business owner had been too scared to come forward before, but with state police now involved, he was willing to share what he had. Williams arranged to meet him that afternoon, this time taking me as backup. We met at the man's store, a small electronics shop. He was nervous, constantly glancing at the door. He showed us the footage on an old computer in his back office. What we saw made my stomach turn. The video showed Droolsworth and another officer dragging the young man into an alley. He was already unconscious, not resisting as the report claimed. What happened next was partially obscured, but the timeline proved the official story was fabricated. The shop owner made us copies, his hands shaking. He'd kept this secret for 3 years, the guilt eating at him. Now he was ready to testify. Consequences be damned. We promised to protect his identity as much as possible. Driving back with this new evidence, Williams and I felt a shift. We finally had something concrete, something the Droolsworths couldn't explain away. But we also knew this made us more dangerous to them than ever. As we pulled up to Catherine's house, we saw police cars surrounding it. My heart dropped, fearing the worst. But then Detective Cat stepped out of one of the vehicles. He'd come personally after receiving threats against our safety. Inside, my wife was being interviewed by state police officers. She was recounting every incident of harassment, every threat. Catherine stood protectively nearby, her own statement already given. Detective Cat examined our new evidence with barely contained excitement. This was the breakthrough he needed. He immediately called for a forensics team to verify the footage's authenticity. The forensics team arrived within the hour. They set up equipment in Catherine's living room, analyzing the footage frame by frame. Williams and I watched as they enhanced specific sections, revealing details we'd missed. The timestamp discrepancies alone proved the official report was falsified. Detective Cat made rapid phone calls, coordinating with his superiors. The state police were mobilizing a full investigation into the department. He warned us things would move quickly now, and the Droolsworths would likely make desperate moves. He was right. That evening, my wife received a call from her supervisor. The hospital board had voted to terminate my employment immediately, citing the ongoing investigation. No appeal process, no chance to defend myself, just done. Williams slammed his fist on the table when he heard. Catherine put her arm around my wife as she started crying. I felt numb, watching my career evaporate because I'd stood up to corruption, but there was no time to process it. Cars pulled up outside again. This time, Droolsworth Sr. himself stepped out, flanked by 4 officers. They weren't in uniform, but their intent was clear. Williams immediately called Detective Cat while I moved my wife away from the windows. They pounded on the door, demanding we come outside to talk. Catherine refused to open it, citing their lack of warrants. Through the window, I could see Droolsworth Sr.'s face contorting with rage. He gestured to his men, who spread out around the house. Williams positioned himself by the front door while I watched the back. My wife and Catherine huddled in the hallway, away from any windows. The standoff stretched on, tension mounting with each passing minute. Then we heard glass breaking. One of the officers had smashed the garage window. Williams immediately called 911, reporting a break-in in progress. The dispatcher hesitated, clearly recognizing the address, but Williams insisted they send units. Droolsworth Sr. must have realized his mistake. He called his men back, but not before one had climbed partially through the window. We had it all on Catherine's security cameras. Evidence of attempted forced entry by off-duty officers. They retreated to their vehicles but didn't leave. We could see them talking animatedly. Droolsworth Sr. on his phone. Williams suspected he was trying to get friendly units dispatched to handle the 911 call. 20 minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived, but instead of city police, they were state police units. Detective Cat had intercepted the call and sent his own people. Droolsworth Sr.'s face went pale as the state officers approached him. The state officers took our statements and reviewed the security footage. They documented documented the broken window and attempted entry. Droolsworth Sr. tried to claim they were conducting a welfare check, but the evidence said otherwise. As the state police prepared to leave, taking copies of the security footage, Droolsworth Sr. made one last attempt. He approached me directly, the state officers watching closely. He leaned in close, his voice low and threatening. He made it clear that this wasn't over, that I destroyed my life for nothing, that his son would walk free while I'd lost everything. His breath smelled of alcohol, and his hands shook with barely controlled rage. The state officers had to physically separate us. After they left, we sat in Catherine's kitchen, exhausted. My wife held my hand tightly, both of us processing how much we'd lost already. Williams, despite his injuries, remained determined. He reminded us that we now had state police protection and solid evidence. Detective Cat called with updates throughout the night. The state police had opened a formal investigation into the entire department. They'd already found more deleted records, more covered-up complaints. The pattern of corruption went deep. The next morning brought a surprise. Janet, the dispatcher, arrived at Catherine's house with a box of additional recordings. She'd been fired the night before, but not before copying years of archived communications. She documented everything. We spent hours going through the recordings. Each one added another piece to the puzzle. Droolsworth's rackest comments, his father covering for him, other officers participating in the cover-ups. It was systematic, organized corruption. Williams coordinated with Detective Cat to secure all the evidence. We made multiple copies, storing them in different locations. The state police arranged for secure transport of the originals to their evidence facility. That afternoon, Martinez was released on bail. The state police had intervened, recognizing the arrest as retaliation. He came straight to Catherine's house, shaken but determined to testify. His arrest had only strengthened his resolve. More officers began reaching out to Williams. The state police investigation had emboldened them. They shared stories of being pressured to stay silent, of witnessing abuse they couldn't report. The blue wall was cracking. 3 days into the state investigation, Detective Cat arrived with significant news. They'd arrested Officer Droolsworth on multiple charges, including assault, civil rights violations, and evidence tampering. The security footage from the cemetery had been particularly damning. Droolsworth Sr. tried to interfere with his son's arrest, but the state police weren't intimidated. They had jurisdiction and evidence. Watching him realize his power had limits was a moment I'll never forget. The arrest triggered a cascade of events. More officers came forward with information. The state police expanded their investigation to include the entire command structure. Internal documents were seized, computers impounded. Williams was officially reinstated by the State Police Oversight Board. His suspension was reversed, his record cleared. He stood taller when he got the news, some of the weight lifting from his shoulders. My wife and I discussed our options. Without my hospital job, we'd need to make changes, but she remained supportive, reminding me why we'd started this fight. For our daughter's memory, for other families who might face the same treatment. A week later, Droolsworth Sr. was arrested. The investigation had uncovered years of corruption, cover-ups, and abuse of power. He'd protected not just his son, but other problematic officers, creating a culture of impunity. The shop owner who'd provided the crucial footage came forward publicly. His testimony about the young man's death 3 years ago led to that case being reopened. The truth was finally coming to light. Detective Cat kept us informed as more arrests followed. Officers who'd participated in cover-ups, supervisors who'd destroyed evidence, administrators who'd enabled the corruption. The department was being cleaned out. Williams was promoted to sergeant, tasked with helping rebuild the department's integrity. He asked me to serve on a civilian oversight committee being formed. Despite everything we'd lost, we had a chance to create real change. The civil rights attorney helped me file a lawsuit for wrongful termination and harassment. The hospital, facing public pressure, offered a settlement and reinstatement. I accepted the position, but not the money. It wasn't about profit. My wife and I visited our daughter's grave together. The chip in her headstone had been professionally repaired, paid for by an anonymous donor we suspected was Williams. I placed new sunflowers and a small stuffed rabbit, not a replacement for Mr. Hoppy, but a new memorial. Standing there, my wife squeezed my hand. We'd survived. We'd fought back. The Droolsworths were facing justice. The department was being reformed, and other victims were finding their voices. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Williams joined us at the cemetery, bringing his own flowers. He stood quietly, understanding the weight of the moment. Together, we'd honored our daughter's memories by refusing to let injustice stand. The months ahead would bring trials, testimony, and continued challenges. The system wouldn't change overnight. But in that moment, at my daughter's grave, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. Subscribe for more videos like this if you haven't already liked the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.